Fellowship online program. So the first thing that we'll do is I'll give you some time to silence your telephones and convince your dog not to bark, and then you can, we'll have some committee moments.
Thank you, Paula. Please, I will be watching for committee moments. First, I'm going to scan all the people. I presume Chris has one, yes? I'm trying to unmute you. Why don't you try unmute? Oh, you are. There you go. You're on, Chris.
Okay. So I just wanted to give everyone an update on our congregational read that we are working to have. We are going to first read White Fragility, the first of several books that we have planned. I've reached out to you a couple of times now. I've gotten replies back from a few people. Some asked, said they needed copies of the book. I believe I've gotten books for all those who have requested them so far. There are books available locally that I can get for about $15, more than what we paid the first round, but less than if you got it retail yourself by a teeny bit. But we'd really like to get going. So I only have a very small group, actually, that had reached out to me. You may already have the book and think that you don't need to let us know you'd like to be part of it. So let me know if you want to be part of the group, because we're going to do this together. We're going to have discussions, bring in other folks and other resources. So we'd really like the congregation to be involved. In that light, I got an email from Judith, our DRE, who is on sabbatical for a month, and she asked me to read this. So this is a message to the congregation from Judith. The book, White Fragility, is not the end-all and be-all on understanding the issues of anti-racism work by any stretch. In fact, depending on who you talk to, it isn't the right place to start, or it's written mostly by a white chick who comes to it with their own baggage. There are absolutely other books that should also be read by those who want to be active on the subject. Like Chris in the UU community will encourage that as well, likely, I'm sorry. And as Chris has pointed out, we have to start somewhere. Some are not going to like the book, how it is written, what it says. Some are going to say, duh, that's obvious, and probably feel that they have done this work already and don't want to hear it again. Some are going to be uncomfortable. Read it anyway. It's a short read, including notes and bibliography. It's less than 170 pages. It's a fairly easy read and or can be listened to on Audible in just a few hours. We all come to our understanding of white supremacy, Black Lives Matter, and racial equality issues from different life experiences, different media influences, and different energies. Personally, I, Judith, am requesting the entire congregation. Let's bring all those individual understandings and experiences to this and have a common experience reading this book to start so we can all be part of the conversation going forward. So I hope that encourages some of you who weren't considering it to consider joining us. And if so, if you cannot get the book yourself or want me to reach out and get one, I will be happy to do so. But in the next week or so, we'd really like to begin, because several people have had the book for several weeks and are very eager to get this going. So I encourage you to participate. I encourage you to let me know that you're interested so we can so I can share information with the group. And let's start. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I'm looking on the front page. Are you going to have a hand up, Barry? Oh, Dave Simons has a hand up, or Julie? I couldn't tell which hand it was. I think it was Dave's.
I'm going to be hosting an investors group meeting at 12 o'clock on Zoom. I'll share the meeting information in the chat, and members of the investors group should already have an email giving the details. It's 12 o'clock today.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Barry, do you have anything to share? No? Okay. Um, second screen, I don't see anyone. Amanda?
Amanda.
Hi, I'm standing in for Crystal Bechtold, who is not here, is not going to make it this morning. We have parents group meeting tonight at 9 p.m. So if you'd like to join us, I put the link in the chat as well as the password, which is simply lowercase UUUF. It's a great support group for parents who just want to support each other.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. I see no one else with a digital hand or a regular hand. I have just a couple of things to share.
Margie has one.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed her. Go ahead, Margie.
Margie from membership. I see we have some visitors today. Glad to have you at UUF. We're a very welcoming congregation. If you wouldn't mind, go to our website and introduce yourself. Send us an email. Let us know if you've got any kids, what brought you to UUF, and glad to see you here. Come back. Our topics are always fascinating and surprising and intriguing. Glad to see you.
Okay, I'm looking at the chat and I do see the link to the parents group, so remember to get that. And I have just a couple of things. I got an email yesterday from Jim, the Interfaith Council, and this afternoon, in honor of Representative John Lewis, who died on the 17th, I believe it was, there is a vehicle procession today starting at Barrett Park on the west side of town. And it's going to stop by the police department and 2 other places. I don't remember all of them, but it's at 3 o'clock and I'm going to go with one friend. So if anyone else would like to go, let me know. There's not really anything I can forward an email. There's not really a link to it, but that's today at 3 o'clock. And in next week's notable news, there are some very good race discussions coming up in the community. So be sure and look for those. I've already sent them into Tracie to be in next week's notable news. One of them is on Thursday evening next week, led by Joel Hunter and the African American Council of Christian Clergy. And then the others are another series called Race and Reconciliation that's going to be hosted at various places in Castleberry. So you can attend in person if you want, or it will also be broadcast live. So as we start this important conversation and getting our understanding better and figuring out what we can do, the more information and discussion we can have and the more people we can meet of differing ideas is better. So let me know if you'd like to go this afternoon and we can work out a little caravan. Okay. Thank you.
That seems to be all of the announcements. And first I'll share my opening words with you. Are you aware that rushing toward a goal is a sublimated death wish? It's no coincidence that we call them deadlines. And that comes from Tom Robbins, a source of some wisdom. If you have your chalice, this is the time to grab it up as we recite together these words. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. And we affirm our relationship to each other even when we can't get together physically. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to help one another. Welcome to our guests. I haven't really looked to see who all's here. I'm just glad that you've come. it's always nice when I throw a party that there are plenty of guests there to enjoy it. So make yourself welcome. Hope you brought your own coffee because I can't pour you a cup today. So sorry. Um, let's see, who else do we have here? We have joys and concerns. This is a congregation that shares what's going on in our lives. Joys shared are multiplied, grief shared is divided, and so we come together. Okay. I'm not sure if we're having a time for all ages. Can somebody clue me in here? Okay, that would be a no. Excuse me. We are going to have an offering though. And so we'll have some music while you either do this digitally or write a check and slide it into an envelope or whatever you're doing. And you can do a donation to go loose in the plate, or you can do a donation to cover your pledge, whatever that might have been. And you can do that now. And the last I heard, the Social Action Committee was sending this money to a bail fund. Because there's a bail fund out there for people who get arrested while protesting, and or for, well, there's so many people who get arrested who can't even round up $200 for bail when so bail fund. Anyway, so let's have the music and go forward.
Okay,
Our
pause.
speaker today, yes, our speaker today is Reverend Tracie Barrett. Her pronouns are she, her, and hers, for those of you who need to know that. She lives in Winter Springs. She's the only UU evangelist I ever heard of. She's a minister of ritual and liturgy for Soul Fire, a UU ministry, and an experimental, experiential, ever expanding digital ministry focused on worship and retreat functions rooted in UU values. Alrighty. And she has some wisdom to share with us regarding resting in the unknown. Give her all your attention.
Thank you, and it's good to be with you all today. I appreciate the warm welcome as always. So my father taught me to track hurricanes as a child, and he felt that this was an essential skill for me growing up in Florida. Now, this was well before the days of fancy computer models and stuff. We would go to the grocery store at the start of hurricane season and pick up our paper maps and head home. And at the first inkling of a storm, he'd have me sit down and track the coordinates, mark the wind speed, and then connect my lines. And we'd sit and discuss possible tracks the storm would take and why. As time moved forward and the news stations got computer models that could show the tracking, we stopped using the paper maps. But we would still discuss the movement and potential movements of the storms. I learned about what makes a hurricane wobble and how that can affect the track. And by what in my eyes was a special kind of daddy magic. He always knew where the storms were going to go before the weather reporters did. It became a ritual throughout the years to call my dad and ask him what he thought of the latest disturbance, because he was always right, always. He only got scared and talked about evacuating twice, Andrew and Katrina. And both those discussions were held while both storms were still Category 1s. After he died, we had our first big hurricane in a few years, and I honestly didn't know what to do. I walked around my house carrying my phone, wanting to call him, but knowing I couldn't. Should I pack my family and leave? Should I just hunker down and stay put? I tried watching the models, but the fear and the grief took over, and I just couldn't focus. Finally, one day, I took a breath. And then I knew what I had to do. So we packed up and we went to my mom's house and we did the prep work there. We settled in for the long watch with one television tuned to the local 24-hour news station with the updates. And that night I did what he would have done. And I stood in the doorway to witness the eye pass over. I was afraid. and I was at peace. Weird, right? But as I stood there watching the trees blow first in one direction and then stop and then blow in the other direction, I knew that we were as prepared as we could be and that we would be okay. There was cleanup to do, there always was, but we were together and we were alive. When this pandemic first started overseas, I was keeping an eye on it, partly because I had a cruise scheduled at the end of February, but partly because I could feel in my bones that this was going to be serious. Different from Ebola or H1N1 or mad cow, all diseases and breakouts that I had watched on the news as they spread. Something about this one felt different. And I often wonder now if this is how my dad felt about the bigger storms, something you just knew and hoped you were wrong about. I watched the news in horror from my stateroom on the ship, knowing that things were getting very serious and I wasn't sure what we were facing when we returned. I began watching the news in earnest at home, reading the articles, listening to the reporters and the scientists. And then I had to stop because my anxiety was taking over my ability to focus on what we needed to do to prepare. So I did what I know to do when something big is coming. I began tracking and I prepared my home. The preparing part was a bit easier. We were able to get to the store and get most of what we needed, although toilet paper was as elusive for us as it was for everyone. For a while, life continued on. My partner continued to go to work at Universal until the theme parks closed down. I worked from home thanks to a broken foot that prevented me from driving into the office, and I began tracking the numbers. Not obsessively, but I would check the Florida Department of Health numbers twice a day. I turned the news off. I chose which articles to read and when. And once decisions were made to close, I did what my father taught me to do when waiting for the storm to hit. I rested. Now that may seem odd. There's still so much to do, right? Well, yes and no. Since this wasn't like a hurricane which comes and then goes, the prep work seems nonstop. The constant wondering of when will we get back to normal and worrying about loved ones. But as we're finding, this isn't a sprint and it isn't even a marathon. This is a long slog. We will be at this new normal for a while. And according to scientists, we'll be here for quite a bit longer than we would like. So we need to take those opportunities to rest or we'll never survive. Going back to my father and how we handled hurricanes, once all the prep work was done and around the house, the tree limbs picked up, the pumps put into place in the backyard, all the loose items brought inside, water jugs filled, and food cooked, he would go check on the neighbors. I remember one year a group of neighbors going around with someone's box trailer and picking up loose branches as they trimmed the troublesome trees. And when he came back inside, he would go take a nap, a long and well-earned nap. And I used to wonder why, especially because the winds were just picking up and the rain was starting. Why was he sleeping when the storm was starting? Because he knew he couldn't do anything at that point. He needed to rest to be able to face what was coming later. Often with the bigger storms that came over us, we would lose power and then the lower levels would flood because the pumps can't work if there's no power. And Florida in the summer in a hurricane with no electricity is not a fun place to be. There is no sleeping at that point. During the eye of storms, he would often rush out to check on neighbors and see how they were doing, try to do any quick repairs he could, and then come back in to rest until it was over. We are being given an opportunity to rest. Not everyone, and I recognize that. But for those of us who can, we should. We will need that time of rest to face what is next, because it's still unknown. We have no idea what our world will look like on the other side of this pandemic. We have no idea what help our neighbors are going to need, what help we might need, what work we will be called to do. Barbara J. Peskin says, often we are found in our grief and comforted, calmed by some kindness, brought alive again by beauty that catches us undefended. Even when the sun is most thin and far, Even at the hour the storm is at its height, renewal nests with sorrow. Love abides, even beyond anger, beyond death. We are held in an embrace, invisible but infinite, moving with all creation, between wholeness and fragmentation, moving always toward the one. Love, do not let us go. Friends, if you are able, take this time to rest. That doesn't mean just sleeping, although it can. It means turning off the news if it's making you anxious. It means finding ways to ease your soul and your heart and give both a break. It means finding a small thing to do to take care of yourself and those in your immediate circle. For many, according to my Facebook feed, that seems to be baking or learning a new craft or picking up an old one. For some, that means time planting gardens or adopting pets. But for others, this could simply mean going to bed earlier and sleeping in a bit. For me, it means being more intentional about my days and my activity levels. I have found over the past couple of months that other than a few shows, I've really stopped watching television as much. I'm back to reading more, knitting more, and just sitting. Not necessarily in meditation, but just sitting in silence, taking in the sounds around me and outside of my home, noticing that the neighbor diagonally behind me plays music outside on his back porch and thankfully has the same taste in music as I do. Noticing that the neighbor next door calls in all the cats that he's trapped, fixed, and released when it's time for food. And yes, he does this by name. It's noticing my own body and how it moves through this time of great anxiety and stress and recognizing its needs and fulfilling them as best I can. What does that look like for you? What does resting in this great unknown of what happens next mean for you? If you find yourself weary and exhausted, I encourage you to set down your burdens and rest. It doesn't make them go away, but it does allow you a time to pause. If it's helpful, find someone you can share with, as burdens are lighter when they are shared. There is a love holding us. Let us rest in that love and be held. That love is community. That love is our faith, however we manifest it within our beloved Unitarian Universalism. That love is each other. That love is bigger than us and small enough to be a part of every speck of information in ourselves. And of course, there's more than just COVID to deal with. Racial and socioeconomic inequality is on clear display for all to see these days. And as we join that fight too, it's important to remember to take breaks when possible, especially those of us who are activists. The work is hard, and it will take all of us giving each other breaks when we can to bend this arc towards justice. This is the thing. I'm not going to sit here and give empty platitudes that everything is going to work out. We will hopefully never go back to the normal that once was. My hope is that once we are through this, and we as a world will eventually get through this, my hope is that our world becomes kinder, gentler, and more caring to those around us who are on the edges. My hope is that this is an awakening for us. But some of that work is still a ways away. For now, our job is to survive, to take care of those among us who need us, to keep them safe, and to rest when we can. That resting will help when it's time to go out and assess the damage from the storm, clean up, and help our neighbors. May you be able to find ways to rest in the midst of this great unknown. May you be safe. May you be well. May you feel the love that is holding us and be held in that love. Amen. May it be so, and blessed be.
Thank you, Tracie. You're the best. Time to get your chalice out again. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. They whispered to her, "You cannot withstand the storm." She whispered back, "I am the storm." Go in peace, go enjoy, or linger longer and enjoy some fellowship. Kind of loosey goosey here. We'll probably unmute everybody. But before, just one last word, in addition to my thanks to Tracie, I want to thank Amanda Major, Pat Mitchell, Paul Mata, and Martha Kirby, who offered their skills to make this thing all flow better, because there's no way I could do it by myself, like so many other things in my life.
Bye.